they were never threats. It was just immediate actions. And the fact, the unsuspecting. Like a Thanksgiving dinner, his family was coming and I did something and I had a black eye. And I had to kind of proceed with having 26 people for Thanksgiving dinner, or taking my son to get a jacket. And when we asked him if we could do that, I got a black eye. So it was spontaneous. There was never any warning that it was coming, the physical abuse. The barometer and the question we would ask, what kind of a mood is Dad in today? And then I always call it that we did the dance of domestic violence. Okay, so Dad's in a good mood, so we may be going somewhere. Dad's in a bad mood, he's going to stay in bed most of the morning, and we're going to wait until he says it's time for us to do anything. The public place and the private place was happening all the time in our marriage with the kids. We would have people coming in the driveway, and we'd had a fight, and I'd been crying, and he would then say to me, "Mary Lou, do you love me?" And I would say, "Yes." And they'd be getting out of the car. So these are your friends, I don't have to be nice to them. And then just like that, they'd walk in the door, they'd be all smiles, and no one would have suspected. That became the vocal point of our life, that whole keeping the image. And I'm not sure, subconsciously or consciously, but we walked out the house and we were 4 perfect little kids, and in our careers, I would drive to school crying, and then by the time I'd get into my classroom, I'd feel a peace, and that I was respected and loved. I was an excellent first grade teacher, and I loved it. And I would do innovative things, and I'd come home and tell him, and he said, "Wait till they find out what a fake and a fraud you are." And it was like I had a big bouquet of balloons that someone just took a pin and popped them all.
At the beginning, it was clear that Mary Lou was using what Mary Lou would call denial, and she, I think herself, has used the term of denial as a sedative, and she was denying and denying and denying and denying. And my job as a therapist to just sort of wait through the denial.
Denial is a sedative for traumatic experiences. So you live in denial. You hope it's not going to happen again, or that you just move on. I mean, that I could smile and entertain people after I'd been 3 days of living hell on earth before they came. So denial, I think, goes right along with control and fear. Denying that, it's going to get better, and it didn't really happen that way, and or just forget it and then wipe it out. And so some of the things I can't remember because I just blacked them out and moved on. I had to, live my life. He always said to me, "You could never leave me," and he said, because number one, you have a lousy retirement, you don't have any health insurance, and you don't have any family. The pain was so bad that I wanted to kill myself, to end my life and end the pain. And praise God, I knew I had more living to do, and I didn't. But again, he took that situation and me, and my last hope is saying, maybe he'll understand how bad I am feeling, and told him I had attempted suicide, and he went and got a gun, and he said, "I'll show you how to put a gun to your head and be successful committing suicide." And I still hear the cylinders from that situation.
It was at that time that I said to Mary Lou, Mary Lou, you are in a domestic abuse relationship with your husband, and it's time to call it by the name that it is. And then all things changed.
So that was a turning point, finding Jennifer and then having her be there for me when I needed the most, and that I was ready to be honest. I still remember the day I walked in, when it was right after all this incident, and we were talking, and she said, "Mary Lou, you're a victim of domestic violence." And I went, "What?" I was shocked. I think leaving was a start, admitting that I wasn't going back, and then finding out what it was kind of gave a name to it all. I was at my computer and he walked by and he had a suitcase. And I can still see his back in the suitcase. He said, I'm leaving you and you'll never see me again, which was something he did often. And quite honestly, I had never, ever left. I'd threatened to, but I didn't. And so I kind of walked out into my sunroom and his words just kind of went through my mind. And I said, no. I think from all the pain I was suffering, what I had attempted suicide, like, Mary Lou, enough. And I said to myself, no, I'm leaving you and you'll never see me again. And I used that C meaning I'll not be in your life again. And it felt real, it felt honest, it felt like this is what I was going to do. And I thought about it afterwards, and I felt it was God's grace talking to me that I finally heard. And I called my daughter and said, I'm leaving your father. And of course, she took it like, oh yeah, sure, you probably said this, whatever, and even though you didn't do it. But you're more than welcome to come to my house. And I really felt it was over. And what happened to me, I packed my little suitcase, and I got in my car, and I'm crying and crying and crying. And I pulled out of the garage, and I can still visualize it today. Pulled out, and I pulled out of the driveway, and I closed the door, and I felt like something had been lifted off my shoulders, even though I was depressed and sad and confused. And it's like, I don't care what happens, I'm done. And I don't care who knows or whatever. And I left.
In the first 5 or 6 or 7 years, we met more. 8 years even, we met on a more frequent basis. And then it became less frequent and more dictated by what Mary Lou needed and when she would call me. But the fact that what she was doing is she was changing her view of herself and her view of herself in relationship to the world and her relationship with her family.
When you talk about people's feelings about counseling, I hear like someone remark, oh, they've gone to counseling. It's like they perceive it as a weakness, as something that you can't handle it, so you have to have someone else make the decision. And I found that to be so different in the relationship I have with my therapist, and that it's a growing process. And she gives me the foresight to talk things over and see what's going to be the best choice for me to do. And even now, dealing with my adult children, I continue to need that support, and I don't feel it's a crutch. It helps make my foundation stronger.
It's not a weakness to go into therapy. It is a struggle every inch of the way. That's why Mary Lou is strong. She hasn't come out of this a victim. It's that she comes into my office with her agendas, and she hands me one, and she keeps one, and off we go on her agendas.
Our relationship with Mary Lou is very much a peer relationship at this point. She has helped us at least as much as we have been able to help her. She's gone into the community with us to talk about her story, to tell people about her experiences in an abusive relationship, how she got out, how her life is better. And that kind of story can be so affecting to people, to know that there is time on the other side where you can get through this and you can build a better life. When Mary Lou goes with us and tells her story, that is always everyone's favorite part of our presentation, because it's so warm and compassionate and means so much to people that she cares enough to share it.
It's the hardest decision I made and the best decision I ever made. And for people that are watching this to know that they do not deserve to be treated that way, if they could just remember that, that's so important.